Hey everybody, welcome back to the Senators Roundtable. I'm your host Jacob Billington, joined by Paul Quinney today. We're missing Dayton. He's busy at a Saskatoon Blades game, watching them in the playoffs. So good luck to the Blades on behalf of Dayton. Paul, how are you?
I'm really good. Ever since the Leafs were eliminated, spring sprung here in Ottawa. So, you have to wait until that happens before the weather starts to warm up. So, lots of golf and the birds are tweeting, tulips are blooming. And the Leafs are on the golf course.
It's always a good year when the Leafs are on the golf course, and that's every year. Um, Unfortunately, Ottawa's been on the golf course for 2 weeks longer, as per usual. But we did just have the draft lottery, and we got some news yesterday. It was officially announced today that the Ottawa Senators have hired Travis Green as their head coach. I gave a couple of my thoughts yesterday on a roundtable put on by the Hockey Writers, but I think you and I should chat a little bit more about it, just because, just from a purely Ottawa perspective. So, what were your initial thoughts on the hiring?
I mean, I guess at a high level, my first reaction was, what, who, what? Travis Green. I mean, he wasn't even on my radar screen. I wrote an article back a couple of months ago, listed five candidates who I thought could be considered, and so Green came out of left field. I was talking Bay like others were, and McClellan and Claude Julien. So this was a surprise. Um, it's not going over that well on social media here in Ottawa. That's for sure. I think the feeling is that among Ottawa fans was uh, it would have been nice to get someone with more pedigree, but
Yeah, I agree. But I actually have a stat here I'm going to bring up. But you're right. The initial reaction from a lot of Senators fans and people on social media is incredibly negative, and they're not happy about it. Obviously, he didn't have a great tenure with the Canucks, but they liked him in Vancouver. It just wasn't working out. So a lot of people are saying, and I was talking to Matthew about this yesterday, that he's a player's coach. He'll stand up for his players. The players like him. But on the other side of that, he's going to demand the absolute most out of all of his players, which is something that Ottawa needs. He's notorious for having incredibly difficult training camps, and bag skates and all these things that help players kind of with their integrity and make them work harder. I forget the wording you just said, but they were hoping for somebody with a little bit more pedigree. Out of all of the Senators coaches that they've hired, where does Green rank? Do you know, in previous games played or previous games coached?
I can't rank them. But geez, I'm just reading that. I think he coached. I'm going to say 105, 133,
335 is
335. Okay.
335 games as a head coach in the NHL. And based on all of the head coaches that Ottawa has hired, he is ranked third in career games coached before coming to Ottawa. So before coming to Ottawa, Brian Murray had over 1,000, and Hertzberg had 443, and Green is next with 335, and they have Clouston, McLean, Cameron, and Smith with 0 games before coming to Ottawa. So they got somebody with a bit more pedigree than they're used to hiring, which is good. But you're right. When you look at the names that were in the mix, like Berube or Todd McClellan, or even if you think of Jay Woodcroft, or even some of these guys that nobody was really thinking of, they all have much more pedigree than Travis Green. But I do think that this could end up being a pretty good hiring.
Well, and I'll forgive him for there's some observers have said, look, Steos says he wants to develop a winning culture in Ottawa, and they hired a coach with a losing record. Some of that's unfair. If you look at his tenure in Vancouver, uh, no, he didn't have a 500 record with the Canucks, but you have to understand that that was a low point with the Vancouver franchise. When he came in, the Sedins were on their way out. They were in their twilight. He just didn't have a lot to work with. So I don't know how much of that you can hold against him. And it's easy to say, hey, it would have been great if they'd had someone with more pedigree, but all right. A lot of these guys like Berube, rumor has it he's holding out for Sheldon Keefe's job in Toronto. So he can go anywhere he wants. Ottawa would be a hard sell for him.
Yeah, and Ottawa's a little bit of a hard sell for everybody just based on what historically the franchise has done, and that's not much, especially over the past few years. They have a lot of issues. They have a first round pick to give up still for the Evgeny Dadonov situation. We're going to talk a little bit about that in a few minutes, but and it's just not as big of a market, which some coaches will like, but some coaches really like the spotlight, like you'll get in Toronto. But these coaches, there's a lot more attractive options. Toronto has a better roster. The Devils have a better roster. The Jets have a better roster. And they're all in like ready to win mode. Like none of these are headed into a rebuild. And so people are going to look and say, where's my best chance to win? And right now, Ottawa's kind of the bottom of the barrel for the open slots. Other than, I mean, San Jose is looking for a coach too. But
Well, what were your thoughts, Jacob, on the term? If I understood it, if I'm right, I think he's got 4 years on that. Did you find that a little long?
yeah, it's absolutely a little bit long. The average coach lasts 2.8 years. I don't know why you don't just give him the three, but it's not my money, right? And when you fire a coach, all it is money. So if he's absolutely miserable, if Michael Andlauer is willing to just pay up the money, he can be fired without any repercussions other than just coming out of the wallet of the team. So I don't put too much thought into the term just because like there's no cap penalty for firing a coach or anything like that. So I do think the 4 years was long. I would have went 2 or 3, but who am I to really judge on? Because I don't know what was said in the interview. Like you look at all these guys that interviewed in Ottawa, and there's an impressive list, and you even have some like really good AHL coaches like John Gruden, Todd Nelson. These guys were in the running too. Travis Green must have had a very good pitch for Steve Stamkos, Dave Poulin, and Michael Andlauer to kind of say you're our guy. So that's my thought.
Well, with some of the minor league coaches that that apparently that were rumored to have been in the running, I think Stamkos probably figured, look, I need an NHL coach, with NHL experience here if we're going to turn this thing around. And then apparently Green's got a reputation for being tough on players. I'd love to be a fly on the wall in that dressing room to see how those guys react to this because up to now, these guys have had kind of a mommy for coaches, right? I mean, DJ was, a mother to them, mother hen, and I guess Jacques Martin. I mean, what was he going to do with him? He knew he was only there for a few months, so uh, it will be interesting if it's true that he is as tough on players and willing to hold them accountable as everyone says.
Yeah, and one fantastic quote that came from Dayton months ago on this that always stuck with me is that Jacques Martin's job was to get them ready to be coached appropriately. And I think that was his job. And now Travis Green, who can be pretty hard nosed, can come in and really tell them what it's going to be like, how hard they're going to have to work, and what to work on. We chatted just for a minute. Actually, while I was fixing my microphone, you and Matthew chatted for a minute before we started recording. But rumor has it that Nolan Baumgartner is coming in as the defense coach and might replace Jack Capuano. It's time to move on from Jack Capuano. Paul, I'd rather see you on the bench, just for the sake of change, over Jack Capuano. So Nolan Baumgartner, again, the Canucks defense was not very good in that 5-year tenure that he spent with Travis Green in Vancouver. But he was pretty good with the Manitoba Moose for the last 2 seasons. A lot of good things to come out of um, his coaching styles. And again, it's hard to really judge where the issue lies, whether it's the head coach in their systems, whether it's the defense coach. But the one kind of stagnant piece in Ottawa's coaching staff for the biggest struggles has been Jack Capuano, because of course they fired DJ Smith, they fired Zach Burke, and now Justin Peters is the goaltending coach. So hopefully we see a little bit of a change there. And then, yeah, of course, Travis Green is the head coach, and there's a couple other coaches and developmental pieces. Nobody's really said much about where Daniel Alfredson's going to be, if he's going to be on the bench or not moving forward. I don't expect he is, but he very well could be, and I guess we'll see.
Yeah, be interesting. That's for
Um,
sure.
do you have any last thoughts on kind of the coaching scenarios?
No, he'll well, to your point, I mean, you're talking about sort of the sub coaches, that need to move on. Capuano, for example, I would imagine he's going to put his imprint on the team. You'll see a whole bunch of, and you'll probably see him bring in people that he's comfortable with as well. So stay tuned.
Yeah, and I mean the way the Canucks have kind of formed themselves since Travis Green has left. So Rick Tocchet, obviously, he went in and he's the perfect coach for that team. And I mean they have Sergei Gonchar helping out. They have Adam Foote helping out. It's very impressive coaching staff there in Vancouver. So Adam Foote or Adam Graves, I can't remember. I think it's Adam Foote. Um, Forgive me if I'm wrong there. But they have a very impressive coaching staff, and they have done fantastic this season. I hope that Travis Green, I mean, this all happened after moving on from Travis Green, but I hope he can kind of look at the difference between what he did and what Vancouver's doing now, and kind of bridge the gap between the two coaching styles and systems and whatnot. So that's my last thought on coaching for now. We just watched the draft lottery. Ottawa is going to be retaining their seventh overall draft pick. What do you think they do with it? Do you think they make the pick? Do you think that they trade it for, I don't know, Alex DeBrincat, that is only going to last a year and trade him for pennies on the dollar? Or do you think that they forfeit this one to the NHL for the Evgeny Dadonov's whole debacle? What do you think that they should do with the pick?
That's quite, still should, he's in quite a quandary, right? I mean, their prospect pool is so depleted that his gut's probably screaming at him like, keep this pick. It's a number 7 overall. You got to keep him. But on the other hand, when he looks out down the road in future years, particularly the draft next year, that's supposed to be a draft for all time. And assuming that they're still a lottery team, maybe that's the draft. You wouldn't want to give up your first pick in next year. So I guess you could make an argument for trading away this one, but he'd be subject to a whole lot of criticism in Ottawa, I think, if he did.
And he's got this year, next year, and the year after to give up a pick. So it doesn't have to be this year or next year for the compensation. And I think the plan is to do the 2026 pick anyway and hope the NHL is like, you know what, just keep it. We've stressed you out enough about this. Just kind of like they did with the New Jersey Devils and Kovalchuk situation. Um, but yeah, I think that they absolutely need to keep the pick. I think you desperately need to help out this prospect pool. The top 10 of this draft looks very, very good. Um, Assuming best player available is the correct kind of mindset headed into this draft for Ottawa, if there's a toss up between a winger, a center, and a defenseman, what would you like to see Ottawa kind of add to their prospect pool? Because there's a lot of everything. There's a lot of defensemen in the top 10 that are very, very good. But there's a little bit of everything. And so, what do you want to see Ottawa kind of focus on in this draft?
If it were me, it would be defense. They've got two good right-handed defensemen, Zane Perrick, if I've got the
Yeah.
pronunciation of the name right, and Carter Yakimchuk, two right-handed defensemen, Sam Dickinson as well, more all-rounded, but that's what I'd be looking at. As much as it may hurt to pass on some of the forwards that are available. I guess Ginla's son, what's his name?
Tidge Iginla.
Ginla, yeah. I mean, he'd be a nice catch if they could get him. But yeah, I guess given the need to improve the defense, that's probably it'd be those guys that I'd look at.
Yeah, and
Um,
I do think like the whole prospect pool is really suffering. They've got some wingers that are coming up, so I wouldn't really focus too much on position if you're going for a forward. But on defense, like they don't have a whole bunch of anything. They have Jorian Donovan who looks okay. He's had stints that he's looked good, but in in the long haul, he looks okay. He looks like an okay prospect. Um, Lassie Thompson, he's done in Ottawa. Maxence Gannett, he's going to be okay. Maybe a bottom pair defenseman. Like they don't have any huge standouts, especially on the right side where right now you're running Travis Hamonic and Jacob Bernard Docker for natural right-handed defensemen. Like underneath Artem Zub, of course. You absolutely need a right-handed defenseman. Now, don't reach with the seventh overall pick. I don't think you take the guy listed at 13th or 16th or whatever just because he's right-handed. Like if you get there and all the righties are gone and Zeev Boom, I would absolutely be more than happy to see Zeev Boom selected, even though he's an offensively minded left-handed defenseman. Ottawa doesn't need that, but you need to take the best player available. And if it's a toss-up, just take the defenseman anyway. Maybe in a couple years, he's like, oh well, I can play the right side. I'm really good on the right side, and you just never know. So where I
so
yeah,
tell with
go
these
ahead.
prospects anyway, right? A guy comes in, you think he's great reputation, people are predicting great things, and they just never gel in the NHL. It really is a crapshoot.
Are you talking about Eric Brandstrom?
Well, there you. But
um,
he comes in, and I kind of laughed at the some of the language being used among the commentators. Uh, Celebrini's a generational player. Well, every bloody draft, there's a generational player. I mean, they can't all be generational. I guess that's just the hype. And speaking of the hype, I thought the NHL could have done a better job uh, with this draft, the formatting. My God, it was boring. At least in the old days, you'd have the little ping pong balls that they'd put it in the machine. You could see them trickle down into the place, but they didn't have that. They just had Bill Daly with holding up numbered signs. It's
he's
like,
doing his Vanna White impression.
well, yeah, but yeah, yeah. Too bad Vanna couldn't have done it, but it You know, it, I'm he's holding up the sign, and then in the background are all the picks. I don't know what the point of that was. And then occasionally they'd bring in poor Macklin Celebrini and torture him for a bit, putting the kid in the spot. And I don't know. I thought it could have been done better. I think the NFL or any other professional sports team probably would have done a better job with this. I don't know where their marketing is.
See, I actually completely disagree. I think that it was exactly what it needed to be. Short, sweet, concise. It was the show. It was trying to do time zone conversions. It was 6:30 to 7 was the allotted time for the show, Eastern time. But the actual like lottery started at 6:45, and it was 15 minutes, and it was just over and done nice and quick. There wasn't long drawn out stuff like the NHL usually does, like how their games always start 15 minutes late because we all need to hear the anthem every single night, and we all need to see the local fire station wave to all the fans. Like, I'm glad that they do it at the hockey games. It doesn't need to be on TV, but and I feel the same way about the draft lottery. I just think that it it can't just be a tweet, right? It needs to be on TV. But I think that that's all it needs to be is just Bill Daly standing up there saying this is what it is. That's just my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I thought it was pretty boring, but there just seemed to me to lack some jam that other professional sports leagues would have had. But and then Celebrini, I don't know, kid's 17, and they're saying corny things to him, and how do you feel now? And they asked him that 3 times. He's like,
Yeah,
well, what was he supposed to say? And
yeah. And I don't know if Zillow was a paid sponsor of the draft lottery show, but that came up in a weird amount of times. That was quite funny. I really like John Bucci-Gross. I think that he does a fantastic job on the air, so I really enjoyed that. But yeah, and Gary Bettman officially announces. I mean, it was, as Gary Bettman said, it was worst kept secret in hockey right now. That the draft is going to be taking place at the Sphere. That's incredibly exciting. I'm really excited to see what they do. Just the drone footage of the Sphere with the announcement for the draft lottery, or the draft being hosted at the Sphere. I think that was incredible. So I'm really, really excited to see kind of how that shapes up and how that looks at the Sphere.
Well, yeah, but that'll be the last of that, right? They're moving to a new
Yes, it
format.
will.
Yeah, so I'm not sure how that's going to. I was always kind of the draft, everybody getting together, all the teams together, and all the players. I thought that was exciting, a good marketing tool, but I guess that's no longer in the cards.
Yeah, and I think having the ability to kind of walk down and go talk to another GM and just kind of put your hand on his shoulder and say, "Listen, this, and this," like that's pretty unique. And I really like the way that Ottawa, the NHL does these things. And I'm upset to see it going remote, but I understand why the NHL is doing it as well. So
Yeah, well, enjoy the dome or whatever it's called down there in Las Vegas.
the Sphere, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, this has been a pretty short episode, but there's not a whole bunch going on in Ottawa land outside of the coach. So if you enjoyed this episode, make sure to let us know. And we'll see you in the next week or two to talk a little bit more about the draft and maybe some upcoming free agency stuff, and just a little bit of everything for the Senators in the offseason. So if you enjoyed, let us know, and we'll see you next time.